Let's start with the first question, Ron. Oh, you're playing guitar right now?
Yeah, I always got the guitar in my hands.
Well, I guess it's good. Alright, currently you're releasing a single song once in a while. Why did you choose to go for that method?
Really, it was more of an issue of time, where I wanted to do a full album for a long time, but I just don't have the time. I'm not around long enough in one place where I can just build the momentum and get everything recorded and written and focus on it. Just too scattered and too many things going on and too much traveling, and I found that taking it on a song at a time and just biting up those little small bits was the best way to keep music coming out. It forces me to stay consistently active making music, and I don't get overwhelmed trying to do a whole album. It's the best way to do it right now, and I'm so glad that we have the technology to do it and to do everything that I've envisioned for each release, which is not just the song, but having all those other add-ons.
Okay. And another thing which is remarkable about those releases is that you're releasing a different array of formats, including some for musicians, so they can change things around with their own. They can use their own creativity about it. What's about that?
Yeah, that's something. When I was going to be putting out these songs, I didn't want to just stick an MP3 on iTunes and leave it at that. I wanted to give people more for each song, and I just, for myself even, I just wanted it to be just something more. And I talked to people on my forum, asked them what they were interested in, got a lot of ideas, and found the best thing to do would be to have all different options of high-res formats that people can choose from for the song, have an instrumental version. And for guitar players, I have that thing that I'm calling a player pack. Mm-hmm. And it's a transcription of the entire lead guitar part, and it's really detailed. That's the toughest thing about putting out all these songs, is transcribing everything. It's the musical notation, the tab, the fingers, the picking, every little thing. And then I make special mixes to go along with that. One where the lead guitar is removed, so that once you know it, you can play and have all the other backing tracks. And then there's also an audio guide where the lead guitar is boosted to coincide with that transcription, so that you can really hear very clearly what the guitar is doing. So there's that, and then I'm a big studio geek. I love being in the studio, and I thought it would be a good idea to put out the stems for each song. So I made a little thing called the producer pack. And it's for people that like to play producer, like to rearrange songs and do all that kind of stuff. They have the stems to the song. They have a mix of the drums, the bass, the rhythm guitar, lead guitar, vocals, backing vocals, whatever's in the song. Okay. And you can load it into your multi-track software and start making your own mix. Go with this, raise that, affect this, chop this, and do your own thing. And you can play around and just have fun with all the tracks.
So basically, you make your own Bumblefoot remix.
Yes, exactly. Do a mashup.
Okay, but what kind of feedback do you get on this the whole new idea?
People are digging it. People are definitely enjoying it. Okay. And I noticed when I put out, like last year, I put out a transcription book for my very first album, which was an instrumental album. And I started seeing videos of people like really nailing the stuff. Okay. And it was great to see that. So it was just something that I had a feeling people would enjoy, and that there'd be a good reaction from guitar players.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty well.
Excellent. I did some digging on in my preparation for this interview. I digged up some interviews with you, and recently you said some really savvy things about the current crisis in the music industry. I actually think it's pretty good read, actually. But what do you think is the best way for bands and artists to remedy the situation?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk to you all day about the music industry then and now, and what the future is going to be, and just my opinions and my experiences. Mm-hmm. When I'm saying all these things, I'm not talking about I'm not talking about U2 and Metallica and bands like that. I'm talking about a guy who's just starting out and putting his band together and wants to get out there and start making music and delivering it to the masses, and what's the best way to do it, and how to have a future in it. And that's the whole thing. So it's really geared towards those people. And where do we begin with that? Oh my God.
I say from the beginning.
Well, it's become very simple. I mean, 15 years ago, when I started putting out albums, you still had all the big gatekeepers. You had the label, and the label had to work it out with their distro, and then they had to allocate a lot of money toward promoting it and making people aware that it existed. And this was before the internet was as big as it is. I mean, the only way to do that was through ads in paper magazines, which were expensive as hell and very location territorial oriented. It wasn't worldwide. And if you wanted stuff to have visibility in a record store, you had to spend $500 a month just for one location to have it in a listening booth.
Jesus.
So, I mean, that could really add up and it could wipe you out. And then if the distributor is waiting on all, their accounts to come through and it's holding up the money getting to the label,
yes.
And you, of course, never see a dime because the label is putting their money into that stuff, so you're not going to see any royalties ever, and I never did. And that's without labels really doing all that stuff. They didn't do major promotion. They didn't, push it on radio. They didn't push it in any which way. They didn't help set up a tour. There was nothing. So even without all of that stuff, they would still say, "Oh, you're in the red and owe us $20,000," and then, meanwhile, I'm busting my ass making albums and not making a dime doing it. And how, not that you do it for the money, but, you still have to pay your bills. And if you're putting all your time into making this stuff, and then you're not seeing any money back, after that, how are you supposed to live?
Yes, and I also think it must be very disheartening when you're putting all your effort into things and making the best songs you can, the best music you can, you don't get something of a profit out of it.
Yeah, and it's just, at that point, it's indentured servitude. You have to do it under contract, so you're forced for years to be working and not making money. And so that's how it used to be. And then the web opened that up. I mean, starting with Napster, the old Napster.
Oh yeah, Napster.
I would have two computers set up, one that I, did everything on, and the other one would just be connected to Napster 24/7 with all these extra songs and live MP3s and things like that for people to grab. And that was back in the late 90s, and yeah, it was the best, and that was the start of just opening up to the whole world. And there were companies like CD Baby, and Amazon also started their own Advantage program for indie artists so that you can start selling your CDs online without having to go through a label.
Okay.
And then this whole thing called PayPal emerged, which made it easy for people to pay, and it just, it became what we have now. And now a young band doesn't have to sell their soul anymore. They don't have to give away their music. That's another thing that happened to me, was that after I got out of the deal, once you get out of the deal, you don't own your music anymore. The label does.
True.
So the label, they decided to stop printing the album, and now there's no way to buy music, and I can't do anything with it. It's not like I can put it out or I can do anything with it. You lose all your music. You lose your rights. You lose everything. And I don't know if bands realize that that was the scenario. But yeah, the label owns the master recordings, and when you're off, they still own them forever. In perpetuity is the term. And yeah, for the universe in perpetuity. That means, if you do a gig on the moon or try and sell an album on the moon,
yes,
that's the label's music, and they're going to sue you.
True. Well,
it's different now. That's the thing. It's totally different now. You can keep your rights, you can keep your music, and you can get it out to the whole world from your laptop. And it's very easy to do now, and that's something that I really want to make sure that young bands understand, that they don't have to buy into the old myth that doesn't even exist anymore. They could do it themselves.
Well, to me it seems I've done it. Well, I'm more active in more metal section of things, so to speak, and I've done a lot of interviews with relatively big bands. And what I'm really flabbergasted about is that some musicians don't don't give a damn about the whole business thing, and that's what I'm really flabbergasted about.
Yeah, I mean, you find that a lot. I mean, you get into music for the passion of making music and playing music and the art side of it, and you didn't really get into it to become a manager and a promoter.
Yes.
But unfortunately, the way I see it is that your music is your baby, and once you make that baby, you have to feed it and clothe it and do what you have to do, and you have to make sacrifices.
It's true.
And that's the reality of life. You have to make sacrifices for your music, for your art, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And it means you have to get a job, and you have to earn money so that you can fund and support making music.
Yes.
And that's not something, that's a noble sacrifice to make. You shouldn't starve your art, because all you're doing is starving your art.
Yes.
You need to really be able to take care of it and support it, and a lot of that means you need to study a little bit of the legalities behind music. You need to be your own lawyer, because you can't really afford a lawyer, and you need to work out a simple contract. You should be able to do that, and you should know what's right and wrong. And these are things that over the years along the way that a musician should really do, besides just wanting a sugar daddy to do all that for you. You need to take care of your own thing, and you need to be smart. You need to educate yourself and know the business that you're in, because sadly there are two words to it: music business.
Yes.
For the music, but no one's going to hear your music unless you take care of the business.
And I mean, labels can be nice to bands, but in the end, there are businesses. I mean, they have to make some kind of profit, and if you're not the band who's gonna make them a profit, you're gonna get ditched sooner or later.
Yeah. So for me, what I did was, in the late 90s, after I got out of my first record deal, I really wanted that to be the last record deal. And, nothing against the label, they did what they do, but it just wasn't my vision of how I wanted things to be for myself.
Yes.
So I started my own business, before the label, but I wasn't going to sign people and do it for them. A lot of people asked me to sign them to my company, and I would say, no, instead I'm going to teach you how to make your own company and do it yourself.
Smart.
And that's what it should be, is that it should be, for the most part, if possible, musicians should be self-sustaining and very self-sufficient and efficient.
True.
And so I started a company and started doing everything myself, and it was the first time in my life that I was making money making music, that I was able to really support myself and make a living and continue to make music. Be able to continue to make music.
Okay, but well, when you look back, actually, there are some bands who pioneered this kind of doing all the things themselves, like Nine Inch Nails and Radiohead. But both bands had a considerable success back in the 90s, and they have quite a large fan base. And do you think that's vital to have a large fan base to sustain yourself a bit as a musician?
Well, I mean, they were grandfathered into the new scene. I mean, it's they had that fan base, they had everything that they did, and then from there, well, the difference with them is that they grew with the time. They saw what the world was becoming and what it was, and they grew with it. They evolved, and they worked within the new rules of how you played the game according to 2000 whatever. and they were smart, and they knew what they were doing, and it's not even about doing smart business, it's about making a smart connection to your fans.
Yes.
Instead of giving fans the music the way they did years ago, they're like, all right, this is how my fans are getting music these days, and this is what they enjoy, and this is what I'm able to give them, this is what I'm able to do now. So they did it. They did it, and that's how it should be. And it doesn't have to be this cookie-cutter way of doing things that it always was.
Sure.
You need to know your fans, know what they want, and give them what they want. Give them what they want in the way that they want it, because it's about them. It's about, you make the music, but for me, the most beautiful part of it is sharing it. It's when, making music is great, but if you don't give it to the world, it's just a tree falling in an empty forest.
Yes, it doesn't.
So you really need to, it's about sharing and finding the most creative way and the most, the way that they want it to be shared.
True.
And keeping it current the way you do it, and not falling into something that starts to become an inconvenience for the way your fans want to get music.
Mm-hmm. But do you think? Well, actually, in my country, I'm from the Netherlands myself, and we also got this major discussion going on about publishing rights versus free downloading. But do you think it will come to a point that musicians have to accept the fact that it's no longer profitable to make a living out of it, and just like, well, quote unquote, make it a hobby?
Well, that's a whole other thing. I mean, my God, with that, music, the income is 1/10 of what it was, because big studios, like, here's what happened once the internet got good and CPUs got quicker and RAM, there's more of it.
Yes.
It's great. It makes everything so convenient, but at the same time, now all the big studios are having trouble because you can make a recording on your laptop. You don't have to buy studio time. You can do it yourself.
True.
Photographers, you don't need a darkroom. Now you can use Photoshop and you have a digital camera. I mean, it goes every aspect. And as a producer, you're not going to get $50,000 to work on an album because the expenses aren't that high and the numbers aren't that big. And even if the ratios are the same, the proportions have shrunk.
True.
So what you have now is, you might do the same album for $5,000. And that's reasonable because that is what the numbers dictate. That's how much money is being moved around because people aren't making as much and they're not spending as much when it comes to the creation of music.
Okay.
So because of that also, your income is not as much in the very end. But
Sure.
for me, being on a label, 0 equals 0. It doesn't matter. If you're doing it yourself,
Yes.
then it's a question of your own business. And it used to be where the making of music was the nucleus of all things, and the
True.
tour and the merch and everything else, and the promo was based around that. Those were all orbiting that.
Mm-hmm.
It's changed a bit. Now the music is more of one of the things orbiting your connection and your personal relationship and who you are as just a human being. It's become more about the artist than the music in a way. At least from my opinion, it became about that. It became about connecting to the artist.
Yes.
And the music is just one aspect of what the artist does, as well as everything else that they do, and then going to see them live and whatever it is, and you put it all together, and hopefully hopefully the fans are understanding enough to know that all the things the artist is doing, it's not for free. It costs them to do it, and they also need to be supported to be able to keep doing it.
True.
So,
But excuse me for interrupting you here, Ron. But do you think because it's no longer about the music, it takes away some of the magic of being a musician? Because it's more about the person, and as like you said before, it's no longer as much about the music as it used to be.
in a lot of ways, I think that world has become convenience over quality, and you used to have nice warm sound of vinyl on this big foot-by-foot square of art, and now it's barely even a file. Now it's just streaming through your phone.
Sure.
And so there's definitely losses in that end, and also because if you are signed, there's less support for you to make your masterpiece. It's more it's just struggling to make a living. And that's
Yes.
everybody in the world in life. Everybody's hurting. This is just where the economy of this planet is at over the last couple of years.
True.
So yeah, it's harder to be able to fund your music. It needs to come out quicker and keep it going. At the same time, though,
True.
I mean, it's there's two sides to it. Like you can't say it's not one or the other. It's one and the other. Besides that, there's the whole other half, which is, well, you know what? It costs a lot less to make music, and it's easier to put out.
Yes.
And I have my day job doing what I'm doing, so I can spend a year perfecting this piece of music and making it my thing that I want it to be, the most beautiful thing ever. And it'll come out, it won't make a lot of money, but it didn't cost me a lot of money. It's something I do for the love.
True.
So in that sense, you could say, yeah, it's becoming more of a hobby. I guess it's the kind of thing where you just say, music doesn't pay the bills the way it used to, because bills are more and music brings in less.
True.
But you just have to be creative with your life. That's what it's about. Is, you know, making music is part of your life, and you need to start getting creative and say, all right, these are the lemons of the world right now. What kind of lemonade can I make with them? And in a year, it's going to be a different set of lemons. And this is just life. You roll with what you get. You play the cards that you're dealt, and you figure out how to make the most of it.
True.
And you don't concern yourself. You don't, bitch about what was or what you wish it was. You say, this is it, and how are we going to make this work?
True. I would like to change the subject a bit, Ron. I know you're pretty much involved in fundraising for MS research. How did you get involved with that?
That happened, it was back in 97. A good friend of mine, a guy, Ralph Rosa, he was a musician, guitar player. He started off as a student of mine in the early 90s, and he was just such a wonderful dude, and we just stayed friends. And he had a band down in Puerto Rico, and they were opening for bigger bands, and everything was moving ahead. They were great. And then he started getting dizzy spells, and he started getting numbness in his hands. And he went to a doctor and was diagnosed. And that was pretty much the end of that. So what he did was, instead of, just feeling like a victim, he spent years going through the system to be able to make a non-profit organization, getting it, government legit, all, 501c3 status and all that stuff, and started an organization where he would donate money directly to the labs and to funding for trying to work on a cure or just maintaining the lives of people that have the disease. And all his family and friends, we would volunteer, and we would set up these different fundraisers. It would be a big dinner with all these comedians, or it could be a concert where all the money is donated, and he and I, we would go to the labs and we would look through the microscopes, and we would look at all the papers they're writing and the documentation of everything, and everything that they were doing and the direction they were taking it, and just went for the researchers that we believed in and the research that we believed in, and we would start writing checks directly to them and to funding to keep it going, to keep the research going. And his condition, the type of MS he had, there's a lot of different types of the disease, and what he has is called a primary progressive, which means it's not like you have good days and bad days. It's just a very slow, steady loss of control of your nervous system, where he'll think to himself, okay, move your left hand index finger, just think you do it. But what happens is the lining of the shielding of his nerves is eaten away by his own body. Whoa. And all the I guess, putting it simply, the electronic impulses get lost. They come out of, instead of reaching the destination, all the paths are destroyed, and little by little. So his brain is fine. I mean, we email each other every day. He uses a laser pointer on his forehead and uses eye movements and everything to, it's amazing that, we still email back and forth all the time, and he's still the same guy, and he's still the same funny sense of humor and everything. But now, he's bedridden, and when I see him, in order to speak, he has to slowly take a deep breath and then have to push down hard in his stomach to get the air to pass through his larynx so that he can talk.
But it must be hard for you as a person to see your friend deteriorating so much, especially when you get back from long periods of touring.
It's heartbreaking, and it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Seriously, of all people, why him? But that's what got me, it hit me personally, and that's what made me aware of MS and made me start doing something about it.
Well, I mean, that's what I like about you. You're actually doing something about it instead of just sitting by the wayside and saying like, oh well, too bad it's happening. But you're actually doing things.
Yeah, and I do what I can. I mean, I take any autograph things that I do, and for every one I donate $5.
Okay.
And every little bit helps.
Indeed. Actually, I would like to move on to your composition activities. I mean, besides releasing your own music and being a guitarist of Guns N' Roses, you're also composing music for commercials, TV series, and movies. And what's for you personally the big difference between composing for movies, series, commercials, and your own music?
What is the difference? Well, a lot of the stuff that's used for TV, they actually use my own music. Like I'll have a song that was on one of my albums, and they'll say, "Hey, can we use that song?" Mm-hmm. So there's that. But when I'm writing specifically, it's different. It feels. I mean, it's creative in a different way. Instead of just deriving vision that you're writing, that you're scoring from internally, someone is giving it to you, and you want to match up the visuals and the mood, the everything to something musical, and often they'll give direction to us. Say, yeah, we want something that sounds kind of like this, but like this, and not like this, and you start busting stuff out, and yeah. It's pretty much, it's that simple.
But do you also enjoy that kind of composing?
Oh, sure, absolutely. It's a different way of doing it.
True.
And it's a different type of collaboration, you could say. Where, I mean, I'll collaborate with this guy Q-Ball who does electronic music, where he'll come in and say, yeah, I have these lyrics, and here's some padded keyboard chords.
Yes.
And then from there, we'll come up with a beat and start making things, and I'll add backing vocals and guitar and mix it and master it. And that's one type of collaboration.
Yes.
Another one could be where, some metal band, like I just did, there's a band, Madonna Gun, they're called, in France, that's working on their album. Okay. And they asked me to play a guitar solo for one of their songs. Mm-hmm. So that's another type of collaboration. So I do it at my studio and send them a reference mix of it, and they like it, and then I send them the wave, and that's another type. Okay. And then another collaboration would be some guy that has indie movie that he's making himself, and he's looking for some music that has a certain vibe to it, and then you write something specific for it, and all different types of just collaborating, is just making music with someone else. And what are they bringing to it? They're bringing the video. Okay, I'm bringing the audio. Okay. Or they're bringing the keyboards. Okay, I'm bringing the guitar. But it's just collaborating with another person in some multimedia way, or just some artsy way, or some whatever it is way. True. But yeah, it's just another type of collaboration.
True. You also collaborated. You also did some guest, I think, vocals and solo for a Swedish band called Freak Kitchen. Do you remember them? Yeah. Well, actually, I'm a big Freak Kitchen fan. And what do you think of the band, and especially the guitar skills by Matthias Englund? I hope I pronounced his name right, but.
Matthias Eklund.
Yes.
Old friends of mine, and we toured together. Like, actually, we would go through France and Switzerland, and we'd just be packed into a van. And I remember we did it twice in 2005, right before I joined Guns. And he's played on my songs, I've played on his songs. I came to visit him at Free Guitar Camp one summer, and as a guest teacher, and we've done like 3-day clinics together at the Raleigh Music Academy in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I mean, we go way back, and old friends. And when Bjorn the drummer visited New York, we got together and had some pizza, and old friends of mine, and I love the band. They're phenomenal, and besides being each one incredible at what they do, they're incredible together.
Yes.
And, great band and a great bunch of people.
Well, I also think Matthias has a very wicked sense of humor.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen some pictures of some videos on some guitar clinic in Atlanta. and he's actually using a vibrator or a dildo for creating certain sounds on his guitar, and all the crowd are like, what the hell is he doing? I think that's kind of hilarious.
I remember stories of him having all that stuff and passing through inspections at the airport. They open up his suitcase and they find a vest full of dildos. And you're like, you can't explain this? He's like, no. Yeah, he's a pretty funny guy. I remember one time we were doing something together where we were performing, and right before I was about to perform,
yes,
he took my microphone and farted on it. I was so pissed at him.
Oh, well, that's very understandable, I guess.
Yeah, so we've definitely gone back and forth a bit with the joking around.
True.
Yeah.
Well, I hope. I did some time ago. I did an interview with an American metal band called Nevermore. I know now whether you know him.
Yeah, with Loomis. Actually, he just left the band, right?
Yeah, true. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I actually did an interview with Jeff Loomis. I think 3 weeks ago.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
I mean, it was actually a face-to-face interview, and he said something very interesting about guitar playing. I mean, I asked him a question about guitar playing, and he suddenly came up with a kind of a rant about young guitar players being more interested in shredding like 1,000 miles an hour and put it on YouTube instead of playing in a real band. And he said, according to him, the key of becoming a better musician is by playing with other people. What's your take on that?
Totally agree. Playing with other people is what makes you, that's what gives you the life experience you need to become a better musician. Mm-hmm. Definitely 100%.
Okay.
And the other thing that guitarists need to do is, besides, I know, coming from me who plays, who acts like he gets paid by the note, with all these silly, fast stuff.
Yes.
Noodly stuff. Mm-hmm. Which is fun to do, but it's not everything. And really the most important thing, which is the bulk of a song, rhythm. Guitarists need to spend a lot of time on rhythm and laying back and letting the drummer lead. The drummer is the leader, and you need to follow the drummer. You don't try and lead the music. Let the drummer lead the music. And that's one thing that guitar players really need to do, and they need to work on their dynamics in their rhythm.
Yes.
And not just playing everything at the same intensity, and be able to put in accents and muting and just make rhythm rhythmic.
True.
Give it a groove. No matter what it is, even if it's metal, it can groove.
True.
Everything's got to be in the pocket of what the drummer is doing, and the best way to do that is to work on your rhythm, let the drummer lead, and play with people. So yeah.
Well, unless you got a drummer like Lars Ulrich, but well, forget about it.
Lars. I like Lars.
Come on. I mean, he's. Back in '85, he was a great drummer, but nowadays he's kind of. I should put it politely. His skills remain somewhat backwards compared to a player like Dave Lombardo or whatever. Or Frank Ferrer. From Guns N' Roses or whatever player.
I think Lars is perfect for what he does. He is the drummer of Metallica.
True.
And, nobody would have made that band sound the same. Like, when you listen to Puppets, it's just as important as everybody. There was no, he wasn't lacking in any way. And I actually jammed with him a couple of years ago. And
okay.
Great. He's the coolest guy in the world. We had really nice conversations about stuff, and he's a real good guy. And when I jammed with him, he's a great fucking drummer. He was great. And in the end, you only have to be good enough to play your own songs.
True,
really
but
what it's about. And I think, unless you disagree, I think he plays Metallica stuff great, and we jammed and did some gun stuff, and he played that great too.
But what I mean is, like, when you listen to the last record, Death Magnetic, it has some really long songs, and I'm somewhat of a tech freak when it comes to music. Like really intricate jazz stuff. And I also listen a lot to Dream Theater, Cynic, that kind of stuff. And I feel... sorry?
Cynic. They were fucking great.
Yes, I know. And I feel like when you're playing like long songs like Metallica does on the last record, I think you should have a drummer who can actually accommodate that and keep it interesting, instead of banging on your snare drum 1,000 times a second. You know?
So I guess that's just a question of taste and the choices that you feel were made in either the songwriting or the production of it. But I mean, even still, I think I don't know, man. I think he's a good drummer.
Well, I think
I like the stuff that he's done, like looking at everything from the beginning. You know.
True.
I mean, shit. Yeah, from Come On and Lightning and I don't know, you know, looking at it all, I think that the guy is a fucking legendary drummer and
well, I'm not disputing his status, but I think you know what? I'll just let the last Ulrich part rest here. Anyway, I actually would like to move on to your to one or two questions I got about your Guns N' Roses activities.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance your own activities with Guns N' Roses?
How do I balance life? Basically, it's kind of like it's like having a testicular problem. It's like you have two balls and one of them is humongous.
Yes.
And you have to sort of figure out how to walk like that.
Mm-hmm.
GNR being my big ball.
Yes.
And everything else being actually a bunch of smaller balls. So I guess I have a very weird testicular problem. I have one giant ball and then a dozen smaller testicles. So it's really hard to walk.
Yes.
And figuring out how. Yeah, it's a challenge sometimes. Just how do you budget your time? Mm-hmm. And how do you be in a few places at once without an army of clones? Mm-hmm. It's not easy. You just... You know, it's when Guns needs me, I'm there, and when my time is free,
yes,
I run like the wind.
And perhaps you can use a stick or cane, just help you walking.
And as much as I can. So right now I'm giving Skype guitar lessons because I've just missed the hell out of teaching.
Yes,
and it's gone down from doing it a lot to not doing it at all, and I've missed it. So I'm doing Skype lessons, getting back into producing bands, which is something, I might start recording an album of some people at the end of next month. And
that's good.
So yes, I'm getting back into that, putting out my music and doing these guest things. Like next week I'm flying out to Israel. I'm playing with a death metal band called Salem out there.
Okay.
And we're going to be doing a show together where I'm going to be playing a bunch of their stuff, and it's to commemorate an album they have called Kaddish that came out in '94, and it's the re-release of that album. So to commemorate it, I'm flying out, and we're going to do a big long show together.
All right. So, when you're looking at your various musical activities, it also shows that you've got quite a diverse taste in music. I mean, you're playing with a death metal band, you're playing with Free Kitchen, you're playing with a more like electronic artist called Cue Ball.
Yeah, and then I'll put out, some like clean, poppy version of Yellow Brick Road.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I just love making music, and my heart, the core of who I am, I think, is really in old school metal. That's really what it boils down to. Like, if I had to pick a band that I was gonna play in and die playing in, it would probably be Manowar.
Manowar.
That's my favorite.
Well, yeah.
Also, I started playing music. I was inspired by Kiss. When the Kiss Alive album came out, and that's what made me want to get on stage and with bombs and lights and the whole big thing. And hearing the Beatles as a kid is what made me really love music and love the production of music and everything you can do to a song. So yeah.
Well, when it comes to the whole Kiss thing with the whole bombs and lightning and all show elements, I think you pretty much nailed it with Guns N' Roses. I mean, I watched some clips from the Rock am Ring performance you did on 2006.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I mean, you were playing like I don't know how many thousands of people, but it had all the theatrics you ever wanted, I guess.
Yeah, we had the big old stage and the big old light show and all the pyro and all the stuff. that when I saw Kiss in '79 for the first time, and I was just in awe of it all. I was amazed. And I remember it was in Madison Square Garden. I was in the second balcony away, and even still I could feel the heat from the big flames on the stage on my face.
Yes.
And now every time we do Live and Let Die, I go right up to those flames about 2 feet away and let them burn my face. And just like, yeah, doing it.
Well, I mean, it must be great then when you're actually seeing some people live like Kiss, and a couple of years later you're actually doing it yourself. I mean, it must give you some kind of gratification.
Yeah, and hopefully it does for them when they, I hope they realize like how many bands and musicians that they've inspired and in a sense paid it forward to in a way. They put the light into someone else, and that person took it and took it as far as they can take it, and now they're going to give the light to someone else who 10 or 20 years later is going to be doing the same. True.
But just wondering, Ron, I mean, when you're in Guns N' Roses, you're pretty much in the spotlights. How do you cope with your, quote-unquote, celebrity status, and what's keeping you grounded?
Well, probably the fact that I don't feel at all or think I'm a celebrity, and most people probably don't either. That makes it pretty easy. Honestly, I'm not a kid now. I'm set in my ways. I know who I am, and that kind of shit doesn't go to your head anymore. You've been beaten down enough by life to know what's important and what isn't.
Sure.
And everything is, I have a pretty healthy perspective about it all. I go on and I put on the best show I can for the people to enjoy. And then I walk off stage and I usually say, I just shake everyone's hand, say, another day at the office, and go back and wipe the sweat off, and then go back to the meet and greet room and hang out with everyone and sign stuff and take pictures and grab some spicy food and burn a hole in my stomach and then hang out all night and eventually at some point go to bed.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean it's no big deal, I mean, still doing the dishes and taking out the trash and cleaning out the cat box and just doing everything that I do. It's just, when it's time to get to work, there's just a lot of people watching. So that's.
But I mean, but when you're performing in front of like a crowd of like thousands of people, it must give you one hell of a buzz when they're singing along with the classic GNR material.
Sure, when they're happy, I'm happy.
Okay.
I mean, that's what it's all about, and that's the whole goal. Like, that's the reason that you get into this stuff. It's like I got into performing because I wanted to make people happy.
True.
And that's really, when you pull away everything else, that's like the primal thing of what it's about.
Sure.
And for me, that's, if they're singing along, they're having a good time, they're cheering, they're enjoying themselves, then it's all good, and it's very gratifying.
True.
So yeah, I mean, that's what it's about for me, and anything, that's it. That's my answer. I'm sticking to it.
True. But when you're performing a lot of those songs from Guns N' Roses, they're actually classics. I mean, like My Michelle, November Rain, Welcome to the Jungle. All of them, they're pretty much classics. And how do you approach them from a musician's perspective? Do you try to emulate them as good as you can, or are you trying to give it your own touch as well?
Well, the thing is, every guitar player is different. We have different gear. We have different hands. We have a different attack with our picking. No two people will sound the same playing the same part. So even if I play everything note for note and try and play it exact, it's still not going to sound like Slash, and it's still going to sound like me, for better or worse, and maybe worse. Really, for me, at the beginning, I was trying to put my own thing on it, but then I realized that, these songs, I want to play these songs the way the people came to love the songs and know the songs, and I don't want to rewrite the songs. So when it comes to like a really fast run or something like that, I'll do that my own way, but the main melodies I put in there, and I just try and just do it all and pay respect to the way the song was written and the way the audience came to love the song. So for those songs, when it comes to, if I'm doing, I'm going to do that melody.
Yes.
And then, for the first few, I'll I'll do it the way it was written, and then each one I'll expand on and kind of make them my own thing in between. But yeah, sometimes you find a balance when you can get away with throwing in your own thing without taking anything away from the construction, the composition of the song.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just kind of just take each one that way. A lot of the Slash stuff I just play. I try and note for note it, a lot of it. But at certain moments, I'm like throwing my own thing. So it's like, you know, you start off with that.
But is it really difficult to play the Slash stuff? I mean, he's a really a more feel like type guitarist, really like pretty much a blues player.
I mean, I can play it. I don't mean that to get arrogant or anything, but it's like, you know, you just make sure you can play the stuff.
True.
The hardest thing to play of his would probably be that opening Sweet Child riff.
Yes.
Which is such a cool ass riff that you know.
Yeah, classic one. It's a classic.
Yeah. So that thing, I mean, you know, that's a tricky one. But yeah, you know, you practice it until you can do it, and then you don't have to think about it, and then you can just feel it.
Okay. Let's have a look. Got one or two questions left, actually. Yeah, this is pretty much a nice one. I mean, your buddies in Guns N' Roses, they're all great players in their own rights, especially people like DJ Ashba, Frank Ferrer, and of course Richard Fordyce and Tommy Stinson. And you also had the pleasure of playing with people like Robin Fink and I think also with Brian Mencia. How was it like for you as a musician to play with such great people?
Oh, it's nice. No, I like playing with all different people, and you know, I've been, I don't know if you can say lucky or blessed or whatever it is, but you know, I've gotten to enjoy playing with a whole lot of different people. And you know, I've jammed with Joe Satriani, I've jammed with Lita Ford, I've jammed with
Lars Ulrich.
I mean, Alan Toussaint, the jazz dude. I've jammed with all kinds of people, and it's great doing that. You know, it's you feed off different spirit, and you just go in different directions with things, and you know, as long as everybody's nice. In the end, that's really what it boils down to. If they're nice people, when you take the instruments away, then it's a good time and a pleasure to do it with them.
But do you also take their influence into your music in some way? Like you take some kind of their vibe and probably try to emulate it in your own music?
I don't know if that happens a lot. I think if anything, you could get well, there are times you get inspired.
Of course.
I mean, for example, like Guthrie Goldband, phenomenal guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
I laid a guest solo on one of his songs, and it was such a cool, fun song, and it inspired me to write a similar type of song. So he had a song called Rhode Island Shred, and it inspired for me one called Guitars Still Suck.
Yes.
Is very quick, kind of thing, and just, you know, very fast moving. And just everywhere. And so yeah, that kind of stuff happens. But I think like there's been times when I was producing a lot of hip hop artists in Staten Island, and
did you actually play hip hop? Okay.
Making, you know, I started getting really into it and started throwing a lot of hip hop stuff into my own music, like around like the Uncool CD, things like that.
Yes.
So that does happen. Yeah.
Mm. All right. I'm actually about to go for my last question.
Nobody.
Okay. Can you end this interview with some funny tour stories, preferably more your Spinal Tap stories, Spinal Tap moments?
Oh, jeez. Most of those are blocked out of my brain just so, you know, so I can continue existing. What was a Spinal Tap? All right, you know what? Actually, a perfect Spinal Tap moment.
Yes.
It was Wembley in London, July, I think 29th,
yes.
2006.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember right. I could almost remember every date of every show. We're playing, and we're doing the intro to Rocket Queen.
Yes.
You know, doing it. Suddenly, we see the crew bring out these like little platforms that were maybe like, I don't know, maybe 12 feet wide by 6 feet out, and they bring out one on either side of the stage.
Yes.
And we're looking like, what the hell are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
And then we, break into the main group of the song, and they rush out and they take them away. And we were like, what the hell was that? What was that about?
Mm-hmm.
And then we noticed that there were about 24 little people.
Mm-hmm.
Wearing all like red, white, and blue outfits, and they're just waiting on this backstage, like along the wall, just hanging out. And we were like, "What's going on?" And it turns out that management was going to have us extend the intro to Rocket Queen, and they were going to bring out all these little folks and have them hop onto these little platforms and dance.
Okay.
I guess similar to when they dropped down the Stonehenge statue.
Yes.
And you had the two folks dancing around it. And so that kind of thing. But it didn't happen, and no one told us.
Okay.
So it was just I don't know if I'm telling the story well enough, but I mean, that didn't happen, and we were arguing with management.
Yes.
Where the communication broke down, and how were we not informed that this was going to happen? And that was a Spinal Tap moment.
I would say so, yeah. That's a genuine one.
20 little people dancing behind us, we weren't told, but it ended up not happening because no one told us to extend the intro to the that's a Spinal Tap moment.
I say so, yeah. That's a genuine one.
Yeah, very, very close to Spinal Tap itself in that respect.
All right. Ron, I think this was pretty much my last question.
All right.
Okay, I would like to thank you for your time and your very cool answers. If you get any final thoughts or words or whatever, just spill them out.
Final thoughts. All right. Well,
yes.
Thank you very much to all the listeners listening to this. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed chatting.
Yes.
And,